Pericles understood the true legacy of a man. What you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others. Such is the life and legacy of Dr. David Abshire, a man whose character, ideas, and example stand today as a lasting call to greatness. From his earliest days in Chattanooga, Tennessee, young Dave Abshire spent a lifetime developing a character defined by faith, kindness, insight, and integrity. Many remember that he never lost his gentle southern drawl, nor his ability to, as Kipling wrote, walk with kings and never lose the common touch. After graduating from the Baylor Preparatory School in 1944, young Dave set off for a distinguished student career at West Point. He served valiantly in the Korean War as a platoon leader, company commander, and division intelligence officer, receiving many decorations for bravery and self-sacrifice. It was in Korea that he witnessed firsthand the horrors of war and dedicated his life to building bridges and bringing people together with a sense of grace and civility that harkened to an earlier age. Few have used their time as effectively and efficiently as Dr. David Abshire. The story is well known. Having earned his doctorate from Georgetown University, Dr. Abshire joined forces with Admiral Arleigh Burke to launch the Center for Strategic and International Studies. In launching CSIS, Dr. Abshire essentially created the modern think tank, bringing together the best of government, academia, and the private sector to address policy challenges and develop strategic solutions. From 1970 to 1973, Dr. Abshire served as Assistant Secretary of State for Congressional Relations. During the darkest days of the Vietnam War, he was brought in to work across party lines and rebuild relationships between the White House and Congress, all for the sake of the men and women on the front lines. In this time, he built a unique reputation for working effectively with leaders from both parties and bringing them together for a higher purpose, a challenge to move to higher ground that he would issue time and again throughout his life. In 1983, Dave was called to serve as U.S. Ambassador to NATO, where he addressed the strategic challenges posed by the Soviet Union. Working again across party lines, with decision-makers in the executive and legislative branches, and with foreign dignitaries and diplomats, Dr. Abshire's leadership allowed the alliance to counter the Soviets, prevent World War III, and set the path to win the Cold War. For his service in NATO, Dr. Abshire was honored with the highest Department of Defense civilian award, the Distinguished Public Service Medal. With a long-proven ability to think strategically, understand the bigger picture, and work with disparate groups of people, in 1986, President Ronald Reagan, then mired in the depths of the Iran-Contra crisis, asked Dr. Abshire to leave his post at NATO to serve in his cabinet and help restore confidence in the presidency. With a deep understanding of history and the mistakes made during the Watergate crisis, he helped craft a plan based on integrity, honesty, and transparency that has been widely credited with restoring the legacy of the Reagan presidency. For more than 8 decades, Dr. Abshire exhibited a passion for preserving the lessons of history and applying them to the modern condition. He dedicated himself to passing on the roots of history and giving future generations the wings to employ those lessons in the critical challenges facing our world. It is largely through this body of work that Dr. Abshire will live on in the actions, ideas, and character of the individuals and organizations he touched. Dr. Abshire authored 7 books, with an 8th, his memoirs, finished shortly before his death, as well as countless articles. In his writings, he did not simply decry modern crises, but instead focused on building coalitions, inspiring action, and finding real solutions. In 1999, Dr. Abshire turned his attention to reinvigorating an organization he believed was vital to the task of equipping future world leaders, the Center for the Study of the Presidency and Congress. Today, that center remains among the greatest of his legacies, as it continues in his spirit of encouraging long-term strategic thinking, bipartisanship, civility, and a new level of cooperation between the government and private sector. Nothing, though, is more critical to the mission of the center than its efforts to provide meaningful mentorship to help guide and shape the next generation of leaders. From the esteemed Presidential Fellows Program to events and projects around the country, the Center for the Study of the Presidency and Congress has helped train and inspire thousands of America's most promising over the past 5 decades. Dr. Abshire's legacy is written on the hearts and minds of each of these students, and his impact will be heard in their words and seen in their actions for decades to come.
Courage means the ability to move forward when you cannot be absolutely certain of the consequence. Mark Twain says history doesn't repeat itself, but it can rhyme. Let's learn some good rhymes. Put others first and themselves second. They put their men and women first. You know, this is an element of leadership that's been lost around Washington. People thinking building power, it's by frontal assault. It's not. I know my Lincoln inside out, and house divided cannot stand, and you got to work together, not to dumb down compromise, but to get on higher ground.
Having been empowered by the wisdom and leadership of Dr. Abshire, and inspired by his commitment to engage leaders from both ends of the political spectrum, the Center has become one of our country's best resources to address key national and international challenges. CSPC has embarked on projects focused on developing bipartisan solutions for strategic issues, such as cybersecurity and the security of critical infrastructures, enhancing our nation's relationship with neighbors in the Western Hemisphere, and building strategic vision and political unity as the U.S. confronts the threat of radical groups, terrorism, and civil war in the Middle East. The Center's Project Solarium 2017, inspired by Dr. Abshire's abiding confidence in the leadership and strategic long-haul thinking of President Dwight Eisenhower, is designed to bring leaders together across the vast political divide, from both government and the private sector, to address the strategic challenges facing our nation in the areas of budgeting and fiscal health, education, energy and infrastructure, political reform, and national security. To build upon David's legacy and to honor his memory, CSPC has embarked upon the creation of the David M. Abshire Chair. With generous lead gifts from Robert Day and the Dr. Scholl Foundation, this chairholder will embody the legacy of Dr. Abshire through a dedication to strategic leadership, bipartisanship, and a keen grasp of the lessons of history. But for all his accomplishments in government, for all his service on the boards of some of America's great corporations, for all his participation in community, religious, and social organizations, the real living legacy of Dr. Abshire is perhaps most clearly found in the words and ideas he left us in his own voice that will live on for generations to come.
We have forgotten the role of heroic leaders that do great things and that get people to dance with the angels because of their greatness. The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion, and then we shall save our country.
In his final article, published shortly after his death, Dr. Abshire called upon the President and Congress to break through the political deadlock, overcome partisanship, and solve the nation's problems. He said the goal should be the formulation of sound common sense and sustainable policies that are ideologically neutral and able to win broad public backing. He felt that such a course would allow the nation's political leaders to overcome the day-to-day crises so that they might look over the strategic horizon. And in vintage David Abshire prose, he issued a challenge for the ages by saying, "Our charge to our leaders should be simple. Set aside your own rivalries, engage the very best people from within your organizations and beyond, and chart a course together that puts America back on the path to greatness before it's too late." This was the life mission of Dr. David Abshire, and it remains our duty to answer this call to greatness that he gave us through his work, his character, and his example.